Hi, I'm Professor Lee Jensen, and today we're going to be talking about deliverable number 3, which is the unit testing of the Jot pizza service. So previous to executing your work on this deliverable, there's a few things that you need to make sure you do. You need to make sure that you have forked the classes repo for the Jot pizza service down to your development account, and then copied that or cloned that code down into your development environment. And then you need to make sure that you have read and done the instruction both on like how to do linting, how to install jest, how to run super tests, creating your tests, how to do coverage. All that kind of stuff needs to be done before you actually start the work on deliverable number 3. This deliverable pretty much assumes that you've done all that. All that's actually done in this deliverable is just configuring and setting up your CI workflow so that when you check in your code, whenever you make any changes to your pizza service, it automatically runs all of those tests, checks your coverage, checks your linting, and validates that you're good to go. So that you're always in a good state, and you have confidence in that because your automation is actually telling you that everything looks great. So just visually looking, if we go to the class diagram, you can see that we've done all of that work to set up jest in our environment, changed our code, put the configuration files that we need there within our code. And now we're going to be writing the GitHub Actions script to actually do our testing, our linting, and our coverage. And that will result in building a badge on a README file that says everything's good and shows us what our coverage number is, or it'll say we're not doing so great and our coverage number is too low. Either way, when you're done with this, you've got an automation process that checks all of your unit testing for your Jot pizza service. So let's go ahead and dive in and look at what the text within the instruction actually tells us. First thing that it says is that you want to create a new file, just like we did for the Jot pizza front-end code. We want to create a workflow file in the Jot pizza service code. So I'm going to copy this name right here. I'm going to toggle over to my code that I've forked and cloned locally to my development environment, and I'm going to create this file in here. Now it needs to be in the root, so I'm going to make sure that I click down here on the root and go ahead and push a new file button and just paste that name in here. It'll create the directory structure automatically for me, so I'm all set. I just need to go ahead and paste the script within it. Now the instruction actually takes you through line by line basically what all of these parts of this are. I'm going to be doing that with you, so I'm going to skip everything that's actually in this textual part, but you should definitely go back and use that as a reference to review how things should be done. So I'm going all the way down here to the final workflow, which is just right before it describes what the rubric is and what your assignments you're doing. And I'm going to copy that out of there and go ahead and paste that over into my project. Same things that we're seeing here, the things that you saw in deliverable number 2 with our front-end workflow. We're naming our workflow CI pipeline. That's what's going to display whenever GitHub Actions executes it. We're going to execute the workflow whenever there is a push on the main branch, or if somebody pushes the button within the GitHub browser interface to actually manually trigger that. And then there's only one job in here, and that's the build job. The first step that it's going to do is it's going to actually install some services. Now this is different than what you did in deliverable number 2, because we need a database in order for our test to run so that we can test that the integration between the backend service code is able to actually talk to the database code. So we're going to declare 2 GitHub Actions using the special keyword of MySQL that we want to set up a MySQL database server in our Docker container that we're going to deploy. We're telling it what version we want, what the username and password, or what the password is for the root user, and also what we want the database to be called. What port we're going to be listening on, which is 3306, is a standard one. And then we're going to give it some commands that we want it to run so that it knows when all of these run successfully that the database is up and ready to go so they can continue on with the workflow. All this is basically doing is just pinging with the password and waiting until it responds positively. If it takes more than 10 times, then it's going to time out and our workflow will actually stop. But when that's done, we have a database up and running in our Docker container that we can use using the password and username, the root username, and this password right here. Now, note that that is only used in the Docker container when you're running under GitHub Actions. It has nothing to do with your production password and username. It has nothing to do with your development environment username. And that's why we can be a little flippant about that and just throw it in here, because this thing is completely ephemeral. It's going to go away. All the data that's in there, anything we put in there is going to go away, and it doesn't have it's not leaking any secrets to anything in any other environment than what's being ran in the Docker container. So we're cool with just putting it in there and having it publicly available within our GitHub repository. So the next thing that happens is we clone our repository into the Docker container. We set up Node.js just like before. This is specifying version 20. That's the current LTS version for Node.js. longtime support version for Node.js, but that will probably be different by the time you actually watch this video. So just substitute what the current version is there for what you're actually doing. Then we build our code so that we install our code so that we get Jest, Supertest, Express, everything that we need as a dependency there. And then we run our first part of our validation sequence. So we run JSLint, or ESLint, to make sure that we haven't introduced any incompatibilities with what we expect the quality of our structure and code to actually be in there. You should be able to just run this locally if you want to make sure that it runs right before you run it up there. So I can come up here and do something like npm run lint, and it will print out, if there is any problems, it'll print out the errors. In this case, there didn't print out anything, so I know I'm good. And that's pretty much the exact same thing that's going to happen when I push my code up to my repository. Next thing you're going to do is you got to create your configuration file. So this is the config.js file that the service uses in order to know what database to talk to, where the pizza factory is, what its JOT secret is that it's using to actually, sign token requests with. And you don't want to check that in from your development environment or your production environment because that would contain secrets. So here we're just putting in a dummy one that only references the values that are found within that dummy database that we just created. But it does reference two secrets that we will use later on when we push to production, but they're not actually written inside the workflow code. So it's representing some magic thing called secrets with this text of JWT secret, and then also the API key to actually talk to the service factory in order to create pizzas. So we don't want to put those in there. So how do we actually handle that? Well, we copy one of these values right here. We head on over to GitHub, and we're going to go and look at the settings for this project. So we're, oops, sorry, not this one, right here. We're going to go over to our version. So this is my student version of it. I'm going to go over here into the settings, and I'm going to go down here to secrets and variables. And then I'm going to go to actions. So I'm specifying a secret that is available whenever an action runs in the global environment. And I'm going to create a new secret here. I'm just going to put that secret name in here, and I'm going to paste in my value for what I'm going to sign all of my JOT authorization tokens with. And this just needs to be some random unique key for your application. But you got to remember what it is if you ever need it again. I'm just going to blow a whole bunch of garbage into here and add that secret. And then I'm going to do my other secret, which is my factory API key. And this is the one that you should get from the AutoGrader when you register and set up to use the AutoGrader. It'll actually generate one for you. That's the one that the pizza factory identifies with you and associates with you, so it knows any pizza that is created with this key is from you. And if somebody doesn't have a valid key, then they shouldn't be making pizzas. So I'm going to just, once again, create something random here, because I don't want to give you my secret key, but it's like, super. So that would be a real key in your case. In this case, I'm just going to put a bogus one in here, and I'm good to go. So that will automatically be injected into this script when it actually runs in your workflow process. Next thing I do is run my tests. So it's going to use the information in this config file. It's going to access the database that's specified up here by running that service, and it's just going to run all of those tests that are specified there. And if they run correctly, then we're good. It'll go on to the next step, which is to set our version. Just like we did in the front-end code, we're just doing a very simple date scheme for our version, and we're going to input that into our job variable, which will be output from this right up here. That matches the value that's given down here as our version. And that will allow us to use that version in the deployment jobs, which we will add in a later deliverable. But that sets up our version number, good to go. Then the final part that we want to do here is we want to actually look at what coverage we received when we ran our tests. So Jest is going to put out coverage information into the directory over here under the summary. We're going to parse that information here using just different command line tools here. In this case, we're doing a grep on it, and then pulling cut and other different command line tools to pull that information out of there. And then we're comparing the percentage that we got to see what color we should apply to it. So if we're less than 80%, then we're going to print out yellow. If we're greater than that, we're going to print out green. And then we're going to replace that coverage information using the sed tool, and we're going to call a third-party tool which just generates an image for us. So we give it some values on the URL, and it's going to generate an image for us. we're going to commit that to our repository and replace that badge that's currently out there. So if I toggle over to my code base right now for my JWT pizza service, my JWT pizza service, you'll see my code coverage is 0. That image will actually get checked in with a new image based upon the coverage that was returned when we ran the tests here in our workflow. So with that done, we're all set. Currently, if I toggle over to my tests here, and I just do npm run test, we can see that it's running fine. You can see the coverage is working. It ran, I've got one test in there, and this is basically just the simple test that we actually give to you in the instruction. But I'm only covering like 43 lines of my code. So that should actually show up as yellow once I actually run here. So let's see what it does. We've got our continuous integration pipeline all defined there, and we're ready to check that in. So we add CI pipeline with tests, lint, and coverage, and we're going to push that up. So with that committed, if we did that all correctly, we should be able to come over here to our environment and look at actions under the service and see that indeed it is actually running everything. If we expand that, it's working on the build step, the only step there, or the build job, the only job we have in there. And it's just done the setting up of like the database and everything there. And now it's going to check to make sure that it's actually there. You can see it's been waiting for 2 seconds for it to come, 4 seconds, and 6, 8 seconds. Hopefully it will actually have this here in just a minute. There you go, set up the database. And now it's set up Node, it's installing our dependencies. Just ran lint ran great. And we saw the coverage spin by there really quickly. So now here's the real question, is did our badge get updated? So if we head back over to our code, go down and look at our update here and refresh the page and scroll down and see that indeed, yes, the coverage has been updated with our current coverage of 43.1%. Now, sometimes it takes a little bit of while for that to actually come in, but eventually it should show up once it's actually got your image file and all the caches have cleared there. But once you've got that, you're pretty much set. We can toggle back over here to the instruction for the deliverable and check to make sure that we've done everything we said we needed to. So we successfully executed our actions on commit, and our tests are run, and lint is run. Was our version updated? We'll have to go check that. We don't know that yet. And then we have at least 80% coverage. So I'm failing 65% of the deliverable rubric right here because I've only got 43%, but you've done much better than me, and I'm sure you've got all your tests running. So that last part is the version number there. And you can go and look at the script to make sure it's actually outputting it there, but it should be put in properly into that version JSON file, and in later versions of our deployments, we'll actually use that version number. So check, check, check. We got everything done for deliverable number 3. Way to go. Hope you enjoyed it.